Good morning. Today, we will once again discuss program management. This is our third discussion on program management in about as many months. That's a reflection of how important the subject has become as enterprises accelerate their digital transformation journeys. A digital transformation initiative will be truly successful only if you can bring multiple digital projects together in a way that they deliver much more than the sum of its parts. And the program management skill is the ability to manage multiple projects in this manner. In our first webinar in this series, we discussed the growing importance of program management. In the second, we discussed the importance of program management in reducing complexity and improving value delivery. And today, we'll discuss the impact of effective program management in an organization. And we have people with multiple expertise here, not just in IT or digital, but in infrastructure. So welcome to this Science Techies webinar. I'm Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate this discussion. The discussion is in association with PMI, one of the world's leading project management institutes. It's a US-based not-for-profit professional organization, and it has a very vibrant chapter in India. Its certifications add enormous value to professionals. Today, we have with us three distinguished professionals. We have with us Ram Singampalli. Ram is Chief Operating Officer at IT company Hexaware. Ram has close to 3 decades of IT industry experience and has held several leadership roles. Prior to Hexaware, Ram was the Chief Delivery Officer at Atos Intel. He led the defining, building, and delivering of Atos Intel's services such as digital transformation, application management, and cloud. Ram spent over 26 years at Intel, including as head of its managed services organization with P&L responsibility for the majority of Intel's IT revenues, and as head of operations for the retail and logistics vertical. Welcome, Ram.
Thank you.
We have Somnath Nandan. Somnath is Vice President and Head of Engineering for Urban Infra at Tata Projects. He has 28 years of experience in engineering and design, including 7 years in United Kingdom. He has worked with various authorities, including the Mumbai Metropolitan Region Development Authority, Airports Authority of India, NHAI, Network Rail in the UK, National Roads Authority in Ireland, Transport Scotland, Railtrack Scotland, and various metro rail authorities in India. He is now exploring how new technologies like building information modeling, 3D printing, augmented reality, and digital twin can aid in sustainable and efficient design and execution. Welcome, Somnath.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
And we have with us Dr. Srini Srinivasan. Srini was part of the previous 2 webinars we had on program management. He is Regional Managing Director for South Asia in PMI. He also leads the PMI IT Systems Working Group. Srini has over 30 years of global experience as a CEO, business unit leader, business builder, and entrepreneur at the intersection of professional services and technology. Before coming to PMI, he was the managing director of Arthur D. Little India. He also served in senior leadership roles at Altran Technologies and at the Hay Group India. Welcome, Srini. Those of you viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I will put them to Ram, Somnath, and Srini. Srini, coming to you first, give us a sense of the scope and the nature of positive results that can occur with program management, and why do you say so?
Shilpa, thank you for having us back on the program. So I think this is about how the proof of the pudding looks like at the end of the day. We've talked about program management, about how it's critical for organizations and how it helps reduce complexity. But now, at the end of the day, we want to talk about what does good program management look like, and what kind of effects or impacts does it have on an organization. So one of the things that we've noted, first and foremost, when we talk to organizations we work with, is that most organizations, regardless of what industry vertical they happen to be in, tend to have an internal kind of a traffic light system in the way they categorize how well their programs and projects are doing internally. So many organizations will have a green, yellow, and red. Green, as you can imagine, are programs and projects that are doing well. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're progressing on the right path. Then you have the yellow or amber, where programs are not quite off the rails, but there are some areas of concern. And then there are some red programs where things are not going well. So the first obvious impact of effective program management is that it unlocks tremendous value within an organization. So what we find, roughly speaking, across all industries, is that 20% of all programs within an organization might be in either red or yellow. And so if some of these programs are put back on the right track, it automatically unlocks a tremendous amount of value within the organization. And not just for the organization, but for the organization's customers. The second impact that we see across organizations, and this is very, very interesting because we hadn't even anticipated this, is if program management is done effectively, what it does, it creates a new archetype of program manager within that organization, somebody who is cross-domain, cross-functional, and somebody who is focused on service delivery and value delivery excellence. And you might say, what's the big deal about that? The big deal about that is that in most organizations, program managers and project managers kind of grow up in one domain. And they tend to stay in that domain. And therefore, the ability of an organization to be able to put a program manager onto a program outside his or her area of comfort is very difficult. So the second and most important objective that we see happening within organizations is that you create a multi-skilled group of senior professionals who you can deploy across domains, across verticals, across problem areas.
Okay. So Ram and Somnath, let me come to you. I mean, both of you have enormous experience handling massive projects. Ram, of course, massive digital transformation projects now. Somnath has been involved in very big infrastructure projects. Give us a sense. I mean, you heard Srini talk about program management. I'm sure you have been integral to, handling massive projects and creating individuals who eventually went on to handle big program management projects. So tell us, from your experience, what kind of impact has program management had on organizations?
Thank you, Sujit. I think Srini spoke about unlocking the potential within the organization. He also spoke about building the talent that multidisciplinary. I think the third dimension that he didn't speak, but that we see that, especially this is true for any large organization, is effective program management is not just unlocking some potential, but it's also a growth lever. That means our ability to take on a complex program for our customer, dissect it, manage it very effectively, and deliver the expected outcomes for the customer is an important aspect. Right? So that's what people look for, right? So there is a conscious effort within the organization to build multidisciplinary program management capabilities so that would become our growth lever, not necessarily deliver more effectively. Right? So that's the first part. The second part is also internally, though we spoke about, Srini spoke about having a traffic light system, red, amber, green. It's more importantly, how your talent gets engaged in the programs. If the programs are running very well, your employees are more engaged, employees are motivated more, and you have a very fun working environment. But if you are managing them badly, and you'd have the negative side of it. So for me, in addition to what Srini mentioned, the two things: one, it is a differentiator, and a growth lever for us. And two, it is an effective employee engagement tool, right, for motivation and all other aspects. So that's how the scope goes in. But it's the third dimension that I would put it is also programs would fail. Some programs would fail, whether we like it or not. But when we face upon a failure, if we are doing effective program management, we would have explained and we would have understood what there is about this project, what can go wrong, customers, employees, all the stakeholders on the same page. When things go wrong, everybody would have tried their best to recover. When it doesn't happen, there are no hard ones. Everybody understands that it was managed well. Unfortunately, the outcome was bad. You haven't lost the customer. You haven't lost the customer satisfaction, though the project was failed. That's an important aspect of it. So it is important for customer satisfaction indirectly. That's how we see it, and that's how it becomes integral part of our capabilities along with our technical capabilities.
How many examples you can provide that where all of this came together and really worked for you?
I can take, for example, we were working with one of the retailers, a very specialty retailer in North America, and they wanted to launch a program that would deliver in less than an hour to their particular segment of customers because their market share was a lot less than that. When that program needs to be delivered, it's a digital transformation. The sleek thing was everybody understands you need an app that needs to be there for them to order so quickly. That's the easier part. But how do you make sure that your supply chain, the fulfillment, and the transport, somebody had to put all the pieces together beginning of the program. Obviously, our job is not to fix the supply chain, but alert them what the tools and other things that are necessary so that the customer would be ready for it, and also help them to create the plan wherein they can experiment, they can learn from it, and ready for the launch in a big way is an important initiative. So if you treat this as a initiative to develop an application versus treat this as a business initiative that requires an end-to-end program management, it's two different dimensions. So we were able to successfully deliver, not because of our technical abilities, but because of program management capabilities. That would be a good example. So I can quote multiple examples, but I would let some comment on it, and we'll come back to this one more time, I guess.
Yeah, yes, Somnath, yeah, go ahead. I mean, you handle some massive infrastructure projects.
Yeah. I think that to understand the scope and nature or the positive results of program management, I would like to give some, recent data, because data is all, as you know, we all understand. This data is published by Ministry of Statistics and Program and reported by Economic Times. So out of 1,673 projects in the country, so 445 projects with a cost overrun of 4.4 lakh crores rupees. 557 projects got delayed, and the overall cost overrun is about 19.8, that will close to 20%, which Srini was mentioning, there's a 20% overrun. So these proves that effective program management, how it is important, and if we're not doing it correctly, where we can end up. So there are various reasons given, like land acquisition not there. Obviously, I represent the infrastructure, so my reasons would be slightly different kinds of reasons. And maybe delay in engineering, detailing, change in scope, ordering, supplying materials not available. But an effective program management, can foresee at least some of these things and can give a realistic picture that what could happen, where we are heading, rather than we end up with this kind of overrun, and then there is very little chance we can mitigate this. But rather than is we have to just adjust to the additional cost and time and loss to our all taxpayers' money. Okay, so I would say that effective program management means it is for us, it is a time and cost. These are the two main parameters. And obviously what Ram is mentioning, that engaging the talent, that is another part, because people get frustrated. It is not only the employee of the organization, but also the user. As you mentioned, infrastructure projects, we see the road is done, there's some construction going on. It instead of in 20 months, it ended up in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and people are suffering. So that is, you get frustration not only from the employees, but from the users and the general public also. So I think the effective program management is very important. And when we apply this thing, at least we can see some of these things get mitigated, risk reduced, or we get a realistic picture when these things will complete and how we handle this.
So Somnath, you were saying, the stark difference between, you worked in UK, Scotland, Ireland, in those projects there. So what happens there? They decide all of these things. There's somebody like a program manager who understands all the difficulties and challenges that will emerge in the course of a program and ensure that all of those things are handled up front, and only then the project gets going. How exactly does it work there versus here?
See, grass is not always greener.
Okay.
Right. So there are both examples. So I will give you the example which is not very good. So if you take the examples of the Crossrail project, which is almost very multi-billion-dollar project in London. So it is expanding the existing underground tube network. So that project is currently under huge cost escalation, program delay, and then the Office of the Parliament, they are discussing whether they are going to extend it further or they will abandon this project. So that's the worst example, because they could not handle the program. Or maybe it is like that they have done the program so massive and so unrealistic way, they have lost the ground. Obviously, you find that they have the program, they have the program management in place, but they are not out of touch from the ground. That's why this happened. Having said that, that is the extreme case. But in general, what we can see that the more planning, more due diligence, more programming, scheduling, these things happens before the actual project kicks in. So that means people are prepared, they know that what obstacles are going to come, how we address these things in the program. And there are various things, like they are dealing with the risk, time, cost, quality, supply chain, safety. All these things are built into the program in such a way that there are, I think technically speaking, it's called float in the program. So the float is properly addressed so that if there is a delay, the critical path is not affected. Okay. So this kind of thing they are doing very diligently. And I would say that, apart from these extreme cases, there are cases where they deliver mostly in time and to the budget. So people are prepared, I would say, and comparing in here also, the programming, the program management is left. Obviously, there are good program management organizations who are doing the infrastructure projects in advance as a project management consultant. But what happens that because of various reasons, the project has been fast-tracked, and there is a necessity, obviously not very logical necessity, to start the project on ground. And then what happens that all the programs and the assumptions, got overridden and crashed, and then we end up with firefighting to get the project completed.
So you're saying we have the expertise here. Sometimes it's just political expediency. They just want to show that something is starting and therefore they start it. Then it's not that we don't have the talent.
I don't have the prerogative to say what is stopping us to do things, but there are various reasons where projects are getting inaugurated in advance, and when all the things are not in place properly. So this happens. Okay, but I would say that the trained program managers are available, but they need to be deployed. They need to be appointed well in advance, and they should be given access to all the hindrances, all the facets of the projects, so they can make a realistic program, so that we can reduce the challenge of to some extent.
Okay. There are ways to do it. Shilpa?
Yeah. Dr. Srini, are there any measurable metrics that you follow when it comes to the entire program management? If you can share, what are some of the key parameters?
Srini, you're muted, huh?
Shilpa, what we're finding is that there are two sets of metrics that emerge. One, Som has already touched upon that, which is the basic parameters of time, cost, material, and effort. But what we're finding more and more is that that is important, and that's almost like the price of admission for good program management. But beyond that, there is a second set of parameters that are rapidly evolving in organizations, where organizations are looking at, for example, what is the level of innovation that was created in this program? In other words, what new, different ways of working were developed in this program? And how did this level of innovation help our customer and their customers? In Ram's example, for instance. So there you begin to see parameters around the kind of technologies that have been deployed and how well they've been deployed, the kind of digital skills that have been deployed and how well they've been deployed. But in addition to that, what we're also finding is many organizations begin to have metrics around what type of work platforms were created, what type of work setups were created, and how well did they work, and how different was it than the way we normally work. Because one of the key aspects, Shilpa, and both Ram and Somnath have touched upon this, with programs is that you're looking at a cross-functional effort. You're looking at an effort that attempts to pull in various functions that don't normally work together on a regular working day. So you have to bring them together as an orchestra conductor, if you will. So then there's also metrics around what type of learning, organizational learning, institutional learning. What did we learn from this? And how can we use this learning in other programs that we do down the road? So what we're finding is that there are, Shilpa, just to sum up, there are quantitative measures, and then there are a lot of qualitative measures. And the qualitative measures are the ones that are emerging more and more in best practice companies now, which normally would not have been taken into consideration 3, 5, 10 years ago.
And you should be documenting all of this and learning from it, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Ram, a lot of qualitative measures emerging as well. I mean, you want to add to what Srini just said?
Definitely. I think one of the other things that we look at it is what is the capability that we are building when we are done with the execution. Obviously, we deliver what is taken upon, but at the end of the program, do we have additional capabilities for the organization, right? So everything that we do, end of it, we want to ask that question beginning of the program: what additional capabilities that organization would acquire by end of it? So that's another way to look at some of the dimensions that Srini mentioned, innovation and a few other things. Srini also touched upon, what kind of work environment. For example, if I take our own examples inside the organization, we look at, are we able to predict things effectively? The idea is the projects would throw challenges the programs would throw challenges to us. But are we able to anticipate these challenges within either in a program or within the organization? And if you predict, do we have things ready to act on? For example, take work from home at the onset of pandemic. If you go back and look into it, there were clear indications from Government of India that they're going to issue a lockdown almost 2 weeks in advance. Right? The moment they invoked the Epidemic Disease Act 1897, all organizations should have woken up and said, something is coming. Right? And fortunately, we have done that, and we actually moved majority of our workforce, almost all of it, 1 week ahead of the lockdown. Right. So our ability to anticipate what's coming in to execute our projects actually impacts all of our business around it. So we focus on that metric and say, are we anticipating things in the right way? That means a project or a program should not turn from green to red overnight. Nothing changes overnight unless even the war situation, it did not evolve overnight, right? It evolved over a period of time, unless a natural disaster like a earthquake kind of a thing. A lot of times you do have enough indications to prepare for. So that's the way we look into it. And there is always you can look for softer aspects of what's happening with employee morale, CSAT engagement, employee engagement scores and other things, which we must be constantly improving through systematic, program management capabilities.
Okay, and you are documenting all of them. I mean, you every time you complete a project.
That's right. As we take on the programs, we do state what we would like to acquire as a new capability, and end up it, we do know whether we have it or not.
Any example you can provide, or something that you learned and then applied later on?
Yeah. For example, as we go through, when we pick up on a program for a customer, let's say for instance, customer, we decided to acquire a particular domain knowledge capability or a particular product knowledge, right? So we bid on the project, we say this is what we want to scale, and that's an objective. So at the end of it, so there is a goal, not just to deliver to the customer, but also the scale that capability by end of that program. So the scale can be measured based on number of employees trained within it, or complex problems that we can solve within the domain, so on and so forth. So there is a clear objective. By end of this, we should be able to solve this type of a problem through this kind of a transformation. Is something that we track.
Okay, very interesting. Somnath, same thing to you. I mean, well, in India's case, we never seem to be learning at all. What have you seen? Are things improving?
I think that we are discussing that regarding this measurement, and it is obviously improving, because the project which were supposed to be completed in earlier days, for example, it takes about 5 years or 6 years. Those projects are now getting completed within a range of 3 years to 4 years time. So obviously there are improvements, because more and more program management tools are getting deployed, and there is a transparency across different functions, which Srini has mentioned, these cross-functional things, because we are dealing with various functions: engineering, design, method, contract, cost, so and documents. So all these are getting more and more connected, and what we can see, the project monitoring or the project controls are improved day by day. And in any large projects, I'm talking say about 2,000, 3,000 CR of value of projects. So there are key dates or the key milestones which are very important to achieve. Once you achieve the key milestones, I mean the whole project is actually broken down in various tasks, and each task they are a contribution from various functions. So I'm going a bit technical, but that is the way this whole thing works. It is actually, as I believe Srini has mentioned, this orchestra. So the person who is actually doing the sticks, and so many people are connected with that. So connecting the dot is very important. So I think if you do the programs correctly, it is measured is very good that you are achieving the key milestone, key dates, meeting the budget, the cash flow is correct, and then the final objective is you do the things in time and within a fixed budget. So that is happening. That's happening.
Wow.
Also, I have just one point to understand. There are very good program manager or the planning manager, these people are available in the market, who are very good at the latest tools. In terms of various tools are available currently, and at the same time they need to be more grounded, in the sense that they need to understand how different function works, how different function contributes to the project completion, because every function is important and they work in a different thing. So without the teamwork, without the joint contribution of these people, if everyone is not in sync, it is not achievable. Whatever the good program or the tools, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Some recent learnings that you can think about?
I think so. We can give few examples, which is completely different than what Ram is mentioning, because I have completely different poles.
Sure.
I am representing, which is a more physical activities, I would say, in terms of doing the construction on a busy town or cities, or over a river or a high-speed rail, various type of projects. So what I would say that when you do a successful thing, so for example, the Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link project, which we are constructing, and it's about 8 kilometers of sea bridge over the Mumbai port, of the Mumbai port. So there are various components coming from different parts of the world. So it is coming from, say, Taiwan, it's coming from Singapore, it is coming from Malaysia, it's coming from Japan, from South Korea. And then we have various facilities within the India. So all this supply chain, their lead time, when they're available, then the geopolitical situation. So various plant and machineries are coming from, say, China. Those things are taken into a very massive program, and all the considerations are given. And so there are machines which are coming from other countries, which are drilling into the seabed for doing large diameter foundations. So all these things are put together in a program, and you can see that, I would say it is very successful in this particular case, that we are able to continue our work during this COVID situation also, and also within this very dramatic, geopolitical condition also, we are executing it quite successfully, and it goes credit to all the disciplines, including the program management.
Okay. Shilpa?
We have this audience question from Varun Raja. While projects are very sharply defined, programs may sometimes end up being fluid. How do program managers deal with so many uncertainties and variables?
Mm-hmm. Who wants to take that?
I
Ram?
can get
Yeah, go
started.
ahead.
I think a lot of times what happens is, given the new way of operating or new way of delivering projects and programs, agile way, people tend to miss that you can't change objectives of the program itself through the course of it, right? And what starts as an experimentation all of a sudden evolves as a large program. And what starts as a large program, when they go through the pilot, and then they would tone it down, right? That's the uncertainty that probably coming in now for the new age program managers when compared with what it was, let's say, 10 years, 15 years back. One of the things that the program managers have to do is first align with the objectives of the program, make sure that the senior management and all the stakeholders are very clear about what we are trying to achieve, because that won't change dramatically every day, right? For example, earlier I spoke about one of the customers trying to launch a particular type of delivery method to a segment of customers. So once you get a clarity on what the objectives are, and leave a lot of uncertainty for how we are going to deliver that, right? So that's something that we should be able to deal with it. But the ambiguity at the level of what we want to accomplish through the program itself, if that is not clear, then we headed in the wrong direction, right? So my advice to the program managers is make sure that we get clarity in terms of what we are trying to achieve, and make sure that everybody has the same objective or same understanding of the objective. I may not agree with the objective, but as a stakeholder, I should understand what was the objective set for them. That's the first step. The second step is when we break it down, and I'm sure the earlier webinar spoke about demystifying or kind of taking the complexity away, breaking it down. As we break it down, understand what is certain and what is not certain. Right. If you take pandemic or same example of work from home, there is always an issue about should we move now? Should we wait for regulations to come in? Should we ask customer? Why would customer allow you to work from home? Because there are security concerns, there are network connectivity. A lot of uncertainty that comes in. But we have to be very clear in terms of what are our priorities. Once we understand the objectives, also the priorities. For example, we said our priority is employee safety. I don't think anybody would deliberate about it. The moment you have it clear that employee safety is at most important and they cannot come to office, you don't need government to come and tell you shut it down. If there is an ability to do it for work from home, one should make the decision. That's how we drove the decision. So what we have to do is you take the priorities, but if you have the priorities in the right order, you can take away some of the ambiguity that you have. Because if the priorities keep changing every day, then you are dealing with a lot of uncertainty, right? So for example, Som speaks about a lot of construction projects. Do we like inconvenience that causes by the traffic when the construction? Answer is no, we don't like it. But the priority is very simple. We would like to get a better infrastructure, therefore we have to put up with it, right? So once we are clear about our priorities, whether it is in construction or in IT or wherever, we'll be able to take away some of the ambiguity that or uncertainty that program manager. So the program manager has to look sequence of these things, your goals and the priorities, and then break it down to the activities so that whatever activity that we certainly need to develop, we must admit it and do it. Something that we have to wait, we have to wait. For example, in work from home scenario, we know that we need a capability to secure our devices. So whether the laptop is in our campus or somebody's home, it needs to be secure. Yes, it is different how to secure when you are in office, but it is different when you are at home. But do we want to have that capability irrespective of pandemic or not? Answer is definitely yes, because for BCP purposes, you would like to have a laptop at somebody's home and then get things. So some of the capabilities would give certainty in terms of executing what is needed. So separating it out, what is definitive, what is uncertain, so that the rest of your staff or program teams and the project teams get the clarity. So taking that clutter away, slicing between what is certain versus what is uncertain, deal with uncertainties, but let the certainty make the progress for the program or a project is an important role for the program. Those are the three layers. I would put it in up so you can get to the next layer and next layer, the things that program managers can do effectively to help navigate through the uncertainty that you have in the projects or programs.
Okay, very interesting. So be very clear about your end objective. That cannot change. Get your priorities right, and then break it down into activities, and that helps you reduce the amount of uncertainty, the overall uncertainty that you have. Srini, Somnath, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Ram said, it is very, very pertinent. I would like to add here that the objective is always clear, that what we are trying to get at the end of the project. Okay, so everyone knows that. Now the thing is,
Somnath, can you just hold your mic a little up? I think your mic
is it clear now?
Yeah. Shilpa, how's it?
It's clear now, I think, yeah.
Okay. No, I can speak a bit loudly if there is some network issue.
Yeah, that might help.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say, the objective of any program is always full and final since beginning, what we are trying to achieve. Now, thing is that when you break it in different tasks, then you find that there are a lot of uncertainty. So the program management is a very dynamic. It always changes. It is not that we prepare a very long line items of programs and we keep it at sacrosanct till the end of the life cycle of the project. It will never work like that. So we need to keep on vigil on the program and changes as the situation changes. Yeah, over to Srini. Yeah.
The one other perspective, Shilpa, that I would suggest to Varun is, by definition, most programs attempt to do something that we within the organization haven't been able to do before, for whatever reason. That's where the complexity comes in. And so by definition, a program is going to be something that in many cases, the organization hasn't attempted before. And therefore, it is not for the faint-hearted. And therefore, there is a lot of kind of thinking on one's feet that is required to connect the dots, as Somnath talked about earlier, how to connect the dots. And I was thinking of an example on this, Shilpa. In Bangalore, where both you and Sujit are based, there's a public sector undertaking called Bharat Electronics. It's an organization we work with quite a bit. And they are in the defense business. They produce defense electronics systems for submarines, for armed forces, and so on. And at the start of the pandemic, you will remember the government of India reached out to a number of organizations, public sector organizations, and said, can you help us manufacture ventilators? Because that was a need of the hour at the moment. And there were not enough ventilators coming in. And what made me sit up and take notice and feel proud is that a public sector organization like Bharat Electronics, who are in the business of defense electronics projects, almost overnight reconfigured one of their manufacturing lines to make ventilators. The key aspect of the story is that Bharat Electronics has never made ventilators before. And therefore, this program, by definition, was doing something that we hadn't done before, and doing something now, not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow, because of the need of the hour. And that is the DNA of many programs. And the fact that an organization like BEL was able to get it done, despite not having any prior experience doing it, speaks volumes about the kind of talent that organizations have. Ram talked about this earlier, the kind of capabilities organizations have, and basically how to harness and take advantage of those capabilities.
So how did they do it? You saw it closely?
So my colleagues have seen it closely. I haven't personally, but the challenge was how to actually do something that we haven't done before, and therefore how to take elements of our manufacturing process that map to making of ventilators, which is on one hand a much less complex product than what BEL normally makes, but at the same time there are elements of how to put all the pieces together that is the most crucial. So that is where the uncertainty comes in. That is where the kind of changes come in. And that's where what I would suggest to Varun is when you look at managing programs, you are at a different level. You're at a different level because you, by definition, have to, I think the other panelists have already talked about this, be able to assess risks, be able to assess technologies, be able to assess the ground realities of the situation, and then put the pieces together.
Okay. Multiple interesting questions coming up from the audience. Let me ask this one. This is from Mayank Tyagi asking, for a startup in digital transformation, what are some suggested good practices experience for program management? For a startup in digital transformation, what are some suggested good practices for program management? Who wants to?
I would suggest Ram take that one.
I think I just want to clarify that, when we refer to a startup, and the startup is in a business of providing digital transformation to their customers. the most important skill that one needs to acquire is being able to navigate through the complexity of the customer organization while managing the program. Because a lot of mid-sized to large-sized organizations, we work with organizations for long. We understand customers deeply, and we know how to navigate through the customer teams and departments. So, important skill to acquire for the startup is how do you understand the customer organization culture? How do you get things done within that organization? Right? For example, in a smaller organization, would be very informal. You want something to be done. You want some infrastructure to be, IT infrastructure to be brought up overnight. So you call somebody, it would happen. Right? And some of the large enterprises, that could be as much as 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because there are strict protocols for right reasons, right? So that means you have to follow that. And if you have a mindset of that, you could do this in 2 days, 3 days, and you sign up for it, and customer operation takes a long time to get that infrastructure to you, you'll be delayed. So the example that I gave is mostly to, in a narrow one, but the broader theme is that focus on the skills that are required to understand customer organization very quickly. The way you build that skill is to have all the right questions in hand to understand the organization. So as you interact with the customers at different levels, different places, pose those questions and actively acquire that knowledge, not passively. That would be the first recommendation I would give. Then next thing is assess the risk, and because you're a startup, you're building credibility and trust with the customers. So don't sign up anything that's outside your control and be under risk. It is not about you putting your organization at risk, but you have to understand that you put customer organization at risk. And if the customer cannot deliver on the promise of digital transformation that you promised them you could deliver it, could be serious implications for customer business, and sometimes to the customer individual careers, right? So you understand what the implications of failure of those programs, and make sure that you don't sign up anything that you can't deliver. It's tempting because you want to get there, you want to open the door, put your foot there, establish, but understand, make sure that you sign up for something that you can deliver very well. So I kind of leave those two thoughts broadly, but obviously there are a number of things one could do.
What if it's a startup which is generally trying to build a new product or something? I mean, it's not trying to deliver a transformation for one particular customer, but trying to come up with something new altogether.
Yeah, I go back to my earlier answer when objectives are clear. If you're trying to build a product, make sure the problem that you're trying to solve for your end consumer, make sure that you stick to that in the initial phases of it and do that very, very well. Because there's so many adjacencies that you can get to it, and trying to solve those adjacencies, you can dilute your focus and you miss on the large one. So if you are on a digital transformation to solve a particular customer problem or a segment of customer problem, find out what you are trying to solve, whatever the startup original idea is. Make sure that you do that very, very well before you get to the adjacencies, because now the opportunities are so wide. You start on something and then you can add 10 adjacencies in very quickly that people would distract you. So make sure that you systematically evaluate them. And obviously, you need to make progress, and you can't stay with a product with one feature, right? You want to add features, you want to address larger size of the problem. Agreed, but it needs to be a systematic program management rather than going with a gut and going with very quick overnight kind of a decision. So stick to it, make decision, informed decision, and stick to it, and give time to evolve and make sure that you do a good job in delivering what was the beginning point, expectations at the beginning.
Okay. Shilpa?
Yeah, I just wanted to pose this question to the panel. What are the best practices around the efficacy of program management?
This is beyond startups generally. I mean, more generally. Srini, some best practices?
So, pardon me. What we find with organizations is that they tend to look at program management as a key capability. Going back to what Ram said earlier, key capability for growth, key capability for a differentiator, key capability for doing something that we haven't done before. So what we find is that good organizations tend to start with that end in mind. How can we create program management as a lever for growth, as a lever for making us different than the rest of the competition, and as a way to develop our internal capabilities?
Okay. Somnath, you want to add to that? Oh, sure, Ram.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think I've spoken about some of them as part of the discussion, but I kind of repeat some of my favorites. I think just PMI does a very good job in terms of documenting best practices, so much knowledge available there. On top of all of them, I think looking at employee engagement and satisfaction, customer satisfaction, as part of the overall program management is very important aspect of it. I said this multiple times. But the more important thing is treating the program management as the responsibility of program manager alone is a bad practice. It is the overall organization responsibility. The way I say it is, it needs to be part of the culture. The way I define in this context, the cultural aspect of it is transparency. For example, if a project manager doesn't get to know what is exactly happening with all the details or the necessary details, then no matter what kind of program manager you bring in, bring under the program, right? It would destined to fail. So the organizations have to build a culture of transparency, objectiveness into it, so that the program managers can be effective. So one of the things that people tend to ignore is the organization culture for programs to be successful. And if it is a small organization, make sure that transparency is paramount. That means there are not many secrets, everybody can see it in there. And second part is, it is not the core program that is developing a product or doing it, but it's every part of the organization. It could be enabling teams like your HR teams and the finance. All of them are part and parcel of your program management, right? So if you take that broad view into the organization and you build the transparency and objectiveness into the culture, and then everything that comes from PMI and then industries and the individual brings to the table can be very successful in an organization.
Okay, that doesn't depend only on the program manager. Somnath, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I was just echoing what Ram mentioned right now. It is the transparency, because in most of the time what we see that the organization leave it to the program manager to make a program and someone will deliver, but it's not like that, because in any program we are dealing with risk, time, cost, quality. So the program need to be robust, it has to be credible, it has to be very reliable, and to do that, input or the participations of all stakeholders, as Srini and Ram both mentioned, that the organization from the top level senior management to all the functions, because we are dealing with material, man, money, and basically all the resources, and the objective, and another main stakeholder is our client. So as long as these all inputs are coming in, then only we can build a robust, reliable program. And unless we have a reliable program, and we cannot see the transparency or what is going to happen. Otherwise, we are just doing some numbers, doing some lines, programs, and we end up with something which is not very reliable or realistic, and we get delayed.
Okay, so organization culture is very important. Have transparency and objectiveness. Srini, there's a question here for you. Is PMI coming? This from Satya Narayanan asking: is PMI coming out with revised BOK reconciling the COVID scenario?
Actually, Satya, we are doing that, especially when it comes to program management. We are in the process of revamping our content and our curriculum for program management, especially from the lessons learned in the last 18 to 24 months. And that should be happening in the next few months. So please stay tuned for that.
What are some changes you think will emerge?
So I think first of all, what we're learning is how to elevate the role of a program manager or a project manager from a traditional in the office, sitting across the table from colleagues, to remote working, distributed teams, and not a lot of face-to-face contact. And therefore, what kind of skills would somebody need to be able to have that level of connectedness and intimacy with the team when they're not able to sit across the table from them? So that's one aspect. The other aspect, already been mentioned by the other panelists, is what kind of way of working and technologies would be most effective based on the nature of the program. So how to assess that, how to look for it, how to assess the risk parameters, how to assess the unknown unknowns, if you will. So that is the other key aspect that we're trying to bring into the content.
Okay, what kind of ways of working will be most appropriate? Okay, so we are almost out of time. We have a couple of minutes. Each of you, let me ask you, I mean, program management, in your experience, once again, I know you would have started with that, but your message to organizations or to program managers, some key message. Ram, you want to start?
The way I say it is program management is like breathing, right? It's
like
as
breathing.
essential, like breathing, right?
Okay.
Breathing is very important for a human, right? So
Absolutely.
or any living being. Program management is like that for any organization. Either you have it within the organization to do these things consciously and effectively, or you borrow that from consulting organizations from outside, right? You don't need to have it all the time with you, but as long as you have access to it, you are consciously deploying it, we'll be able to build a good business and good organization, right? So without program management capabilities, I can't imagine one could build a good organization or a good business. So there must be a conscious effort to build the capabilities.
Okay, conscious effort to build capabilities. Somnath?
I think that we have spoken most of the things, but I would suggest to the young program managers that be realistic and take inputs from all the functions or cross functions, and build in your program with whatever you understand, and learn from the previous program why it has gone wrong, or what is the deficiency in the previous program.
Okay. Learn from previous programs, be realistic. Srini?
Opportunity to unlock value. Opportunity to essentially free up money, resources, time, and expertise within your organization that has been clogged up for whatever reason. And the kind of impact that can have on your organization, because this is within your control. You don't have to look for what the government is doing or what your competitors are doing. This is within your control. And it really is mission critical that you're able to unlock that value. So how to convert your amber lights and your red lights into the green lights.
Great. Opportunity to unlock value, and it's something that is very much within your control. As Ram said, you can't be a successful organization today without doing program management. Thank you all so much. Very interesting discussion. The subject obviously is becoming more and more important as complexities grow. So thank you, Somnath, Ram, Srini. Very nice to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.